Hi there, this is Jimmy Roberts. When it comes to the game of golf, there is no place on earth like the metropolitan area. It's always been a special place for the game of golf and also for golf writing. Some of the most esteemed and accomplished journalists covering the game work here. Now, you'll get a chance to hear them right here on the Metropolitan Golf Writers Association podcast. Enjoy.
All right, Darin Bevard, Senior Director of Championship Agronomy at the USGA. Thank you for joining the Met Golf Writers podcast.
It's great to be here, Anthony. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about the U.S. Open.
Yep. I mean, as everybody gets ready for the grueling test at Oakmont, I wanted to just first, just for our listeners, our viewers, maybe give us a little background prior or up to the USGA, if you will.
Well, I've been with the USGA for 28 years, so there's not a lot of prior. I was a assistant golf course superintendent for 3 years when the USGA. I was lucky enough to get hired in December of 1996. I was hired as a consulting agronomist and did that for the better part of 15 years. Then I was director of the Mid-Atlantic region of our course consulting service. And very soon after that, I was lucky enough to interview and get the position for senior director of Championship Agronomy. So it's been a nice path for me. And I really enjoy working for the USGA. They are a great organization and I really enjoy what I do. So
yeah,
it's been a good career.
You, as the director of Championship Agronomy, what does that entail? Obviously, it's not just the U.S. Open. There are several. I mean, the U.S. Fall Ball is going on as we speak in Plainfield Country Club or at Plainfield Country Club. Maybe give us a little synopsis of what your job entails.
Every year, I am directly responsible for working with our course setup team and the maintenance teams at the U.S. Open and Women's Open. I am always on site for those. I am actually at Erin Hills right now. And so that's liaising with the superintendent. We develop a course prep memo for all of our championships that says, cutting heights, what green speeds are we trying to achieve, rough height, those type of things. And it's my job to work through that and say, hey, maybe this doesn't work here because of an equipment limitation or whatever. You don't run into that very often at a U.S. Open or Women's Open, but I also fill in the schedule for a lot of our amateur championships. I do generally about 6 championships a year, but I'm overseer of all of our championships in terms of agronomic preparations, but the USGA has 9 other agronomists as well as some other support staff that are very qualified to help do exactly what I do at the Women's Open and U.S. Open. So I assign them to championships based on region, association with clubs, that type of stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, you're basically working with the superintendents at these clubs to produce the conditions that we're trying to achieve for any given demographic of our championship. So it's a collaboration. I don't go in and, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this. It's, hey, here's what we want to accomplish. How do we get there?
Sure.
And those guys, the superintendents that we get to work with, they know their golf courses way better than I ever could. They're there every day. But the combination of I know what the USGA wants and they know how to prepare their golf course, working together, we usually get to a pretty good place.
Sure. I'm definitely going to drill down on a bunch of that. But before I do so, how far, I mean, if you go on the USGA website, I mean, they've got US Opens up to 2051.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of them most of them you've been to already.
Yeah.
But let's say, for example, you have a brand new course, let's say as if like Bethpage Black, right, back in '02.
Yeah.
Like, how far in advance are you going? Do you do you feel that you need to be there or start this consultation process?
It's generally 5 or 6 years out if it's a new venue for a U.S. Open or Women's Open, especially. And at that time, you're going through really the infrastructure, the nuts and bolts of the golf course, drainage, organic matter management, all of the things that the long term programs that are needed to be ready when the US Open or the Women's Open or whatever event comes to town. So, you know, does the club have any renovations planned? Hey, we want to redo bunkers. Well, when you're talking about a US Open and you look at traffic flow of our fans and that type of stuff, there's, our operations team looks at plans to say, well, if you put a bunker right there, you're blocking a major traffic thoroughfare, and that's not going to work for us. So it is a real, again, a collaboration with the architect that's involved, with the club, with our various teams inside and outside of the ropes. So yeah, it's generally 5 or 6 years. And then when you get about 3 years out, that's when you really start to look at the attention to detail. The course prep memo is developed. That's a living, breathing document. It's not like what we put on paper for Oakmont 2 years ago is exactly what it is now. There have been changes and things done to, again, you learn stuff over time, or you see things and have conversations. And so you have to be able to, call an audible and try to do the right thing.
Yeah, no, of course. So you come in, and so there's a 5 year, then a 3 year, where you start this, 3 years, after 3 years, you start to dial in sort of, I guess, all those specifications that you guys are looking for. In an instance like Oakmont, it's a place you've been there before. It's a championship caliber course. What types of things are you expecting to be a little different, or is your approach a little different to a course like that as opposed to a course you haven't been to?
Yeah, it's definitely different. This will be my fourth championship at Oakmont. I've done a women's open, a US Open, a US amateur, and now heading into this US Open. So very familiar with the golf course. Now, Gil Hance led a renovation a couple years ago, where they've done some modifications to greens, basically expansions, that type of stuff. So there's some subtle changes, Anthony, but I have a really good track record with Oakmont. So it's you start fine tuning there almost the first time you go on site a couple years in advance. I know, Michael McCormick, the ground superintendent there at Oakmont, amazing guy. He was there in 2016 as a assistant superintendent. So again, there's a continuity there that when you have that, and they kind of know what to expect from us, we know what to expect from them, that it's never easy, but it makes it move along very smoothly.
Sure. I mean, when you can speak a certain shorthand, obviously
Yeah.
that's going to be, they probably already know the questions that you're going to ask and they already have the answers and vice versa, right? So that certainly makes the relationship easy, makes the process easy. And like you said, more importantly, as we deal with Mother Nature, it makes, calling the audible easy too.
Yeah. And, Oakmont is unique. I'll focus on them, but there aren't many golf courses that you could come into and say, literally forgetting all the infrastructure and everything else, that we need to host the US Open here in 2 weeks. And they could be US Open ready. 2 weeks may be more than enough time
Sure.
for
Sure.
them because of the conditions that, their members, their speed of their greens, they're noted for firm, fast all the time. The conditions there they are legit on a daily basis. So again, the fact that they their maintenance team prepares the golf course like that on a very regular basis, also helps a lot. They're not going somewhere where they're not used to being. So
Sure. And just out of curiosity, there's always this sort of, since we're talking about it, um, is there daily speeds fairly close to exceeding championship speeds, or like, what's that? Because obviously they're known for that. And,
yeah, quite frankly, what I will say, they do not consistently maintain US Open speeds on a daily basis. They're probably closer than most.
right.
But in addition to that, Anthony, I will say that I have been there during the fall, and their members play events on greens that are faster than US Open speed.
Gotcha.
Um, but their media center is a lot smaller than what we have for the US Open. So we got to be a little more, a little more careful. But the idea that the members at Oakmont at times play on greens faster than we maintain for the US Open is absolutely true.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine that, like you said, I mean, everybody knows what it's like there and has heard the stories. So I was just curious, and thank you for that clarity. That sounds more reasonable than
And I will tell you, in my case, it's not because someone told me, hey, they're this fast. I was able to measure them myself. So
sure.
I was able to look and go, woof, man. So
Yeah. Is there any the philosophy in terms of championship setup has evolved over time with the step cuts and different types of treatment to the rough. What will we expect at Oakmont for this Open?
well, since the renovation, much like Wingfoot in 2020, we will not have much graduated rough at all. It's going to be a pretty uniform. Right now 5 inches is kind of what the number is, but that could vary depending upon weather. Heading into the event. I mean,
Sure.
it's that again is something that is fairly easy to adjust. A half, 3/4 of an inch in either direction.
Mhm.
But with the renovation that Gil did, the fairways are a little bit wider in spots. And these guys are the elite players are just so good. I mean, I am amazed at what they can do with a golf ball out of deep and thick rough these days. I mean, they're so strong.
Yep.
And so again, it's the rough is going to be thick. It's going to be tough. It's going to be your traditional US Open setup.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there's always been talk about, U.S. Open setup, and but I do think if you're looking for a complete test, and, people will say, well, nobody wants to see someone just hack it out, or, every time, like there's no recovery or no chance. But you do have to test all aspects of the game. You do, like, driving the ball is an aspect of the game. Mental fortitude, above all, is an important test, test of the game and of a championship. So, I think it's to be expected to have that difficulty, that level of rough to be that difficult.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, every rough every lie that you get in the rough is not, necessarily pitch out or whatever. You've got to be able to
Yeah.
read the lie and decide how you're going to play it. You go back to Wingfoot in 2020, where the approaches to a lot of those greens are open. Bryson DeChambeau managed to miss in the right spots and was able to, hack out of that very thick and deep rough
Sure.
pretty aggressively and roll the ball up on a lot of greens. And that's just really good course management. And Oakmont has a lot of approaches that are open into the green. So you don't have to fly it on the greens. There's opportunities to get the ball rolling in the right direction. And, get it on the green. So
Right.
the players will have options.
Sure. How do you manage? Well, we spoke earlier about how Oakmont is already a championship caliber or a test of golf. How, on a day when you talk about, let's say, the integrity of the course architecture versus the modern athlete, that it's just, you saw what Bryson was doing at the PGA. I mean, his drives 340, 350 yards. How, it's becoming so difficult to manage the course integrity. How do you balance that with what they can do with the golf ball?
Well, I mean, it's difficult. It's easier when Mother Nature cooperates and gives you a dry week where you can firm up the golf course.
Hmm.
Um, Wind is, you saw last week for a couple days is the great equalizer.
Yeah.
Um, but really, it's just it's hard. I mean, and you get a golf course that is a little bit soft and a little bit receptive because of getting rain. These guys are going to score. I
Yeah.
mean, they're just that good. But again, having the rough, having the pressure of the U.S. Open, and look, Oakmont is just a really hard golf course anyway.
Yeah.
It's not terribly long by modern standards. I think we're 73, 72 from the tips, which again, that's not crazy.
Right. No, not for sure.
And so, but it's a golf course that if you get it going in the wrong directions, you can make some numbers pretty quickly.
Sure.
So it's just, John Bodenhammer, our chief championship officer, I mean, it is his, that's the one thing is trying to, you know, enhance the golf course architecture, let the golf course speak for itself rather than trying to, put some sort of cookie cutter formula
Right. Right.
on it. I mean, you'll see, a big difference, between Oakmont, just the architecture of Oakmont versus the architecture of Shinnecock next year.
Right.
You don't have thick rough around the greens. A lot of places at Shinnecock, you have the, roll off areas and that type of stuff, which
Sure.
again provides their own unique challenges. So you just come in with a plan, you set up the golf course and you let the boys have at it and hope for the best. And
Yeah.
it's, they're going to shoot low scores. You hope the same guy doesn't shoot low scores every day. So
Yep. Exactly. Since we're talking, given your vast experience in agronomy and now championship setup, are there specific grasses? Are there specific bunker styles? Are there specific sand profiles that seem to give pros more a difficult time than others?
um I don't, I don't think so really. I believe that you have, golfers based on where they grew up playing that, some are very, very comfortable in ultra dwarf Bermuda grass and understand all the nuances of it. But in terms of the level of preparation that you have on a golf course for a PGA Tour event or a USGA event or what have you, um, these guys are pretty good at adapting to it. I think one of the things that sets the U.S. Open apart is that a lot of our golf courses that our sites, our host sites, the players don't get to see them every year.
Hmm.
The you talk about other majors and it's experience is critical. You learn your way around and everything. Well, you don't get your chance to do that at U.S. Open venues in the same way. So I think that's part of the challenge. And again, these old classic courses with the movement in the greens and those type of things, they're hard, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only exception maybe might be Pebble Beach, right? So they do play the AT&T. So that would be only, but that's, like you said,
Yeah.
they're far and few between. We're not going to, it's not like and this is not meant to be any disparaging. I mean, but it's not like the USPGA where they were at Quail Hollow. They're at Quail Hollow
Yeah.
each year. So like, I mean, so to your point, yes, it is a fairly new experience for the most
Yeah.
part.
So yeah, and it's but yeah, they're just really good. I
Yeah,
mean, that's the challenge that you face in setting up a golf course, and the amount of respect that our team has for the players. It's sometimes just got to tip your hat if somebody has a great round, or I can't keep somebody from holing a 40-foot putt, or sometimes they just got it going and they make a few, and you got to tip your hat and call it good.
yeah.
So
When you're setting up for a championship and you have these guys who are let's face it, they're the elite of the golf world. How do you decide the greens are too fast or too slow? Or when you're setting up pins, are you looking for something dramatic, or are you looking for balance over the 4 days? What's the mindset and the strategy behind those decisions?
well, in looking for hole locations, Anthony, I mean, we are trying to find strategically the four best hole locations on the green. Maybe it's, hey, we move the tee up a little bit and the whole location goes over a front right bunker or something. So they have a more lofted club in it, but they don't have much green to work with.
Okay.
Those are the things that, John Bodenhammer and Jeff Hall on our team, look at. And our whole location selection process is elaborate. It's not just like, hey, I think it looks good over there. I mean, we go out and we've already done 2 visits and put a tape measure down on the green, put pin flags in the greens, pick them, finesse them and everything.
Hmm.
And by the time we get to the Saturday of advance week, which is when we start placing hole locations for the first practice round, and the unofficial Sunday practice round, you get a lot of players in on Sunday. Our team, we've got Scott Langley, who used to be on the tour, Brent Palladino, who is a exceptional player
Hmm.
that, they're putting and and we get the feedback on the agronomy team of, yeah, the greens they could be faster, or, hey, we don't need to go any further. I mean, last year on Tuesday morning at Pinehurst, we were there, and
Already.
we were maybe a little beyond there, but our course setup team told us that, we knew that before the players started saying, hey, if the greens are like this on Thursday morning, we may not finish by dark.
Right.
We knew that because
Right.
you can see how the ball responds to all the different hole locations. And so, and then each day, as the hole locations are set up, um, they're putting to them and, say, hey, tomorrow's hole location, if we're as fast as we are today, it could be a problem. So maybe you take a roll off, maybe you just put down a little bit of water to, just give yourself a little protection. But it's, very, it's a very detailed process.
Sure. Is there during championship week, and I would assume that this maybe varies from year to year and site to site, but is there a agronomy question or issue that keeps you up at night, specifically during the U.S. Open?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing that, keeps me up, I do not like hot, windy, dry days because of the perspective of turf health and trying to get greens through the entire day. And listen, we we had a reputation in the past that maybe we earned about, burning out greens, or, um, but that's changed a lot. And we're a guest at our host sites.
Hmm.
And they have to conduct business for the other 51 weeks out of the year that we're not there. So, We really work diligently and hard with all parties involved to make sure that when we leave the greens in acceptable condition.
Sure.
So days that are stressful, and like at Pinehurst with the ultra dwarf burrito grass greens, it was, there are no, again, easy weeks, but turf health was not a huge concern there
No,
because
no.
you're going into the meat of their growing season right after the US Open, where that ultra dwarf's going to thrive, as opposed to a cool season golf course where Father's Day weekend, you may just be getting into the most stressful period of the summer for those grasses. So
Right, right.
that's really, I mean, that keeps me up. And, look, on Thursday morning, if I don't have a bit of a pit in my stomach about, let's see how things unfold today, we're probably not doing our jobs. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, um, so it's very exciting and a little bit gut wrenching at times as well to be part of it. I mean, it's a privilege.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
No,
but
like you said, if you don't have the butterflies, if you're not worrying about something, then maybe you're in the wrong job because you.
and it's no, I mean, it's not a worry. It keeps me up at night with respect to the fact I'm looking at radars and stuff. But when you got bad weather coming and it's going to disrupt your maintenance schedule and disrupt play, and
Mhm.
I mean, those kind of things, I mean, that just keeps my head spinning about, sequencing, planning, everything else. And, it's like, okay, it stopped raining at 2 a.m. What's it going to be like at 4 a.m. when we get out there? And,
Yeah, no, but
um,
that's a great question though. How do you plan for the chaos? Because if you get a day like, remember Beth Page or, like days, tournaments like that cause a lot of chaos. So how do you plan for that?
you, first of all, we've got a lot of volunteers,
Right.
maintenance volunteers, and generally they're in a very experienced group, other superintendents, in the case of Oakmont, people that have worked there in the past. And so you can throw an awful lot of bodies at things, which makes, um, it makes it so you can get stuff done in a hurry. Um, but I think the biggest thing is you just have to pivot and, you know, well, we were going to do this, this, and this. Now we're going to do this and this because we got to get the golf course cleaned up, get the guys back out playing. Um, obviously it's easy to get blinders on, but realize that you have fans that bought tickets to come watch, and you have television schedules and those type of things. So all of that for a U.S. Open or a U.S. Women's Open goes into your thought process. But um, you know, I've been involved. Oakmont in 2016 Thursday afternoon, we got walloped, and yet their maintenance team, they go out, they assess, you work together to come up with a plan, and it's amazing how well you can do.
Yeah. The speaking of the fans, they're the ones that, they see this, they walk on property and they see this beautiful golf course, and yet they don't have a majority of them have no clue what it takes to get to the point that what they're looking at, what that presentation, and conversely, tour players, uh, they maybe, is there one thing about tour players that you wished uh, knew or appreciated more about what you guys do or recognize? If there is anything specific or just something that you thought they might be better educated on?
Well, most of them are pretty good, really. I think if there's one thing that I wish that they would be more sensitive to is sometimes their criticisms can get personal, and it's not personal. And I feel that you have a lot of people that work really hard to put on a golf event that's at, whether it's PGA Tour, the US Open, which is, a huge event. And when some of the comments are made without understanding all of the challenges that may have been dealt with, be it weather or whatever,
Right.
um, it can be upsetting to the people that, especially I'm used to it. I do it every year, multiple times a year, but
Right.
it's again, and look, the players work really hard too to get to where they are. So it's not a one-way street, but just like when they hit a shot offline, it doesn't mean they're terrible at their job. It means they hit a shot offline. And
Yeah.
Sometimes when something's not exactly right on the golf course, it's not because somebody didn't do their job or whatever. There's probably a reason why things are the way they are, and it's
Sure.
certainly not. It's not negligence. It's probably the hand that we were dealt with something else going on.
No, that's a fair point. Let's take it the other way. If a PGA Tour player comes off the golf course Sunday afternoon, and says to you, walks up to you, shakes your hand, and says, "It was perfect." What do you feel like you nailed? If they said it was great and it was a great week and it was the course was awesome, what did they nail that in your mind? What's the first thing that you think you nailed?
Well, the test. I think that the players want to be challenged, for sure. They expect to be challenged at the U.S. Open, but nothing was over the top or tricked up or anything, and that the golf course was just in great condition. It's always interesting because that's very subjective, as you can imagine. But
Sure.
it's I think it's just, look, it's a good feeling when that happens, and it does happen a lot because unfortunately, the guy that says, man, things were really great, appreciate it, wouldn't change a thing, doesn't get the same amount of attention as somebody that comes off in a bad mood, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I just think it's, you gave them a proper test of golf.
Yeah.
That, hey, I hit good shots, I got rewarded. I hit bad shots, I suffered. And, I think that's that's really what you're after is, so that, that's, I think we got the test right. That's what, the agronomic conditions on these golf courses are great regardless.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
it's, and if somebody had a bad day or whatever on the greens, I get the frustration. Hell, the everyday golfers are the same way. They have a great day putting, the greens were perfect. They have a bad day putting, the greens were terrible, and
right.
It could be the same guys on the same greens. So
yeah, I mean, and that's just the nature of golf, right? You play a golf course that maybe you went to go visit and you played awesome. I mean, no one's going to really say that it was a bad golf course, right? But if
no,
you play bad, they may not like the golf course, and so that's just the nature of the sport.
but you want the story to be the players and the golf course.
Yeah.
That's what you want the story to be. And it's when that happens, people always say, oh, how do you know when you've had a successful championship or whatever? And it's, I can't go this, and this, but you feel it in all of your being.
Yeah.
Pinehurst last year, I mean, was it
Spoke
when you got done, it was like, wow, that was something special that just happened here, over the last 4 days with the climax on Sunday on 18.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's I mean, that's.
No, I get it. Before I let you go, we're going to be on to Oakmont in next month. Is there anything that you're excited for, or something that we should be aware of or look forward to in the lineup that is to come for any championship, U.S. Open, Women's Open, Men's Open? What are you looking forward to? Not that you're looking past, but what are you looking forward to getting your hands on after Oakmont?
Well, certainly for the U.S. Open, looking forward to another opportunity at Shinnecock. For the reasons that I just stated, that
Yep.
when we left Shinnecock, it wasn't all about the golf course and the golf and the players. So I certainly look forward to doing that.
Yeah.
I greatly look forward to, ironically, it's next year as well, the Women's Open at Riviera Country Club.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's a pretty special venue, as all of them are, but it's a place that lots of people know because of the PGA Tour event that they have there. And I think watching the best players in the women's game play there is going to be pretty amazing. But, also going back to a historic site like Inverness in 27, I mean, John Bodenhammer always talks about the cathedrals of the game, and that's just what the amazing part of what I get to do is you get excited about all of these places.
Sure.
I'm excited to go back to Wingfoot to conduct a normal U.S. Open, not one in September. And,
Right.
Steve Rabideau, who's the golf course superintendent, there's a good friend of mine. And
Yep.
I look forward to arguing with him and everything else. And, having a very successful event, which we had in 2020, but it was just a little bit muted under the circumstances.
Of course.
So,
Sure.
Pebble Beach, it's just, we're very lucky that we have the venues that we get to go to. So yeah, it's exciting, but definitely, Shinnecock looms large on my radar for,
Sure.
it's a special place. And, just like I said, wanting to walk out of there feeling great about the U.S. Open. So
Absolutely. I mean, I think it speaks to who you are as a person, and as the USGA as an organization, you want another shot at it, of course. And so to do what you do, and hopefully it comes out the best way that it possibly can. Darin Bevard, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know you're busy, and so for you to carve out a piece of your day for me and for our listeners and our viewers, we really appreciate your time today.
I really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do it again sometime. We won't be all that far away from you next year. So.
Nope. And let's tee it up as well. Why not? I mean,
Yeah.
while I got you out here, we might as well do it.
Yeah, well, you're probably better at golf than I am, but
Well, I'm happy to play and have a cigar. That's what I'm interested in.
if you ever want to go fishing, though, I can hook you up fishing, but not get around the golf course. So that would be great. I appreciate the opportunity. Really looking forward to the Open.
Yeah, me too. And it was, as always, a pleasure to have you. Thanks for being on the program.
You're welcome.
Take care.